There could be amendments to the Sexual Offences Act in Dominica. Minister for Social Services and Gender Affairs Gloria Shillingford says persons who prevent the course of justice by making out-of-court settlements will be dealt with. The minister was speaking at a stakeholders consultation on child sexual abuse Wednesday. She says the level of protection for children depends on the vigilance of parents.
It has been suggested that consideration be given to an amendment to the Sexual Offences Act to deal with persons who pervert the course of justice by making out-of-court settlements in cases of child abuse. And I personally agree. I am mindful that there are members of society who question the severity of the law in terms of penalties which can be imposed by the court. The Sexual Offences Act, Chapter 1 of 1998, contains severe penalties for persons who sexually abuse children. For example, incest carries a maximum of 25 years if committed by an adult with a person under 14 years of age. In cases of sexual intercourse with a person between 14 and 16 years, a maximum prison term of 14 years may be imposed. The imposition of such prison term, however, rests with those who administer justice in our courts. The level of protection for our children depends on the vigilance of parents and the wider society. Parents are reminded that they are the primary caregivers, and this carries strong obligations. Parents should always be on their guard, since those they trust can become betrayers. Members of society should report any maltreatment of children they witness or cases where there are suspicions.
Meantime, UNICEF consultant Leon Charles told the consultation that the Caribbean is challenged to deal with the cases of child sexual abuse. Charles says the findings of the study done on child sexual abuse is disturbing.
The first disturbing factor is that the study has found that there is what is called a normalization of the concept of sexual relations among teenagers in the society, in that many of our adults and many people in the society seem to think it is perfectly all right for a teenage child, 12, 13, 14, to have sex with an adult male or adult female, because it happens with both sexes. And this is worrying because it is telling us that what a number of us are concerned about, in fact, other people consider to be normal activity. And if it's considered to be normal activity, it really raises the question, how then do we get them to change that activity? And it is one of the things which we'll have to grapple with during the course of the day today. Because it's not just that we all share the view that this is something that should not happen. There is this normalization based on the impacts, for example, of what they're seeing on the television, what they can access on the internet, and so on. So it is felt that once a young girl, for example, passes puberty and has begun to show her breasts and her sexual organs, then she becomes, as some of them call it, jailbait. She becomes a legitimate target, even though she is below the age of consent. And therefore the question of how we treat with that kind of societal interpretation is one of the challenges we'll have to deal with.
According to Charles, the majority of parents are responsible for the high number of child sexual abuse cases.
The second one the minister already alluded to, that many parents condone the activity. And parents, not just from the point of view of taking payoffs, but one of the things that was prevalent in Dominica and some of the other islands is examples of parents telling the girl children to use what you have to get what you want. And if that's the message coming from the parent, then how do you as social workers, as persons working in the field, really deal with that kind of problem? So the challenge, I think, is a lot more than just trying to identify or profile, which I think is required, but more than just profiling who are the abusers. Because it's a much more complex situation of the society in itself seeming willing to turn a blind eye to this kind of activity and to tolerate it to a large extent. But doing that ignores the effect it has on the young children. I think the minister mentioned a couple, we got the example from Mr. Anthony this morning about a child at 10 years with venereal disease. Right? There are lots of other effects. There is the physical damage that occurs from damaged organs because sometimes the children are too small. There is a question of the teenage pregnancy and all it does for the future of the children. Then there is the whole question of the emotional impact on the self-esteem of the child and the ability of the child as an adult to really form healthy relationships, to relate to men or women, as the case may be, and so on. And therefore, what we're creating with this tolerant attitude is in fact a next generation which will then become burdens of the state with psychological problems, physical problems, and so on.
UNICEF consultant Leon Charles. A leader of the United Workers' Party, Ron Green, says members of his party are anxiously awaiting the 2010-2011 budget presentation carried for July 13. Although the UWP members did not take their oath of office and are not being represented in Parliament, Mr. Green said the United Workers' Party would want to see what Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit is proposing.
Well, we don't have knowledge yet, but we are clear that the economy is going to continue to go down and jobs and opportunities for our people, the agricultural sector, are crashed. So we will make the appropriate contributions at the time when the budget is presented, because we would want to see what Prime Minister Skerrit is proposing to do to deal with what he has not been able to deal with over the last number of years.
Leader of the United Workers' Party, Ron Green. The Dominica Labour Party candidate for Marigot Dayton Baptist has told residents that the answer to their development is in the DLP. Mr. Baptist was addressing a rally held to endorse his candidacy recently. He also made strong calls for unity among the people of Marigot.
The answer is in your hand. Young people, it is time for us to come together and do something. Let us unite so that we can come off the street and find some sort of organization, some sort of employment for us, people of Marigot. Young people, let us unite. We have the answer to our problems in Marigot.
Meantime, Deputy Political Leader of the Dominica Labour Party, Ambrose George, has told the constituents that questions must be asked of their elected representative and not of the DLP senator. George says the question must be asked of current parliamentary representative Edison James as to what he has done since the last election to represent the interest of the constituency. Former parliamentary representative for Salisbury and former employee of the DBPL, Hector John, says the lack of inputs for farmers could seriously affect banana production. Mr. John says agriculture production is faced with serious implications due to government's neglect of the industry. He is therefore calling on the various ministries to put a policy in place to resuscitate the industry.
The problem that we're faced with in agriculture in Dominica right now, as we all know, that agriculture has played a very vital role in our lives, the development of our country, and right now we are in serious problems because of the neglect towards the every aspect of agriculture on the island. Right now we are faced with a serious problem with the banana farmers in terms of subsidy they were getting for fertilizer from the government, and right now DBPL has to stop subsidizing that fertilizer because the government owes DBPL about $500,000. That is very serious because farmers need the inputs right now to ensure that it will help them to improve productivity around the island. We see what we see the abandoned fields, the abandoned farms that farmers are no longer interested because of the neglect by the powers that be. I mean, we do not have an agriculture policy where we could ensure that our sector continue to thrive and develop, and around the island we only see abandoned farms, and that is not what we want. That is heading in the wrong directions. Farmers, the families, the friends, everybody, the entire society, Dominican society, has been affected because of that neglect towards the agriculture industry. So a lot needs to be done, and we have to ensure that the agriculture ministry and also the Ministry of Trade put forward a policy in the very near future that will take agriculture forward.